Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll continue on with my exploration of the works of Alejandro Jodorowsky. This is all stuff that I read at some point, probably most of these things. I haven't read all of his work, but I've got these Jodorowsky library books and have been meaning to dive back into them and really get like a full assessment of his work. So I've already recorded one about Annibal 5, which is in this book, which I didn't like. I think it's a little different than most of his work in that it's more comedic, and that didn't work so well for me. But now we're on to the second story in the library, which is Megalex. This was produced with the artist Fred Beltran from 1999 to 2008, just to give you a sense of like when this is happening. Right out the gate, you can see that one of the things that was blowing people's minds when this was coming out is that Fred Beltran was an early adopter of like really digital tools and getting this super slick like digital finish to his work. So the immediate comparison for me is like seeing also a similar approach and even almost a similar story-wise in places to the manga Gantz. And to me, there does feel both visual similarities. I wish Gantz had been in color. I think it would have been a little easy to visually parse some of what they were doing in there if it looked like this. And then also, I'll point out some other things in here where there's just like masses of bodies being sacrificed in these canals and stuff that looked a little bit like some of the in-stage Gantz stuff. So yeah, we're here in the Yodo verse. This is in the same world as what's going on in the Inkall. And yeah, we're going to continue to explore this future dystopia of the Yodo verse. The story is that there's all of these like clones. You can tell that they're like bioorganically made. They live for 400 days and then they get exploded. And that's kind of like the base level of the society. And it's a tiered structure where you live 400 days, 40 years, 400 years, 4,000 years. And each level below supports the people higher on the pyramid. And so these guys are just blowing people up. They mentioned the name, the Aldebaran, which I know is a star, but also there's a very famous sci-fi series, the Aldebaran series by artist named Leo. And so it's just interesting to see that in here because it connects two kind of sprawling sci-fi worlds in my mind, potentially. I know that's not what Jodorowsky's doing, but it's hard not to see a connection there. This gigantic planet that they're on, I'll show you pictures of. The Megalex is a planet. It's being invaded by these really cool like stingray things from space, and so that leads to some really beautiful imagery from Fred Beltran here. This world, you can also see that Jodorowsky's predicting technology gone wrong. And he's got it right. Some of the things that are happening now, like you've got these guys basically with virtual reality helmets on or augmented reality helmets on, and they're getting mad. The holovid's a damn sight more real than anything in your stupid reality. Let us watch in peace. So they're constantly having their vision filtered by an augmented reality screen. And this guy's saying, look, this thing in reality it is so beautiful itself. And they're like watching it through the filtered system. And they're not seeing anything real at all. And I think we're definitely technologically headed towards that still. We have the tech in place. In this sequence, the new clones are being born. They're coming out of this like ball thing here that's like this technological womb. I think design-wise, it's a little spot on with the big glowing red, like clitoral light and the the lips here spreading open. But it's giving birth, so I get it. You're giving birth to now who's like one of the main characters of this story. At this point, he's just an anomaly with no name. He's a clone that's too big. He's born too big. You can see here he's supposed to be this size, and he's a giant. He looks quite a bit like John DeFool from the Inkall, and he serves a similar purpose of like the Fool. So Jodorowsky's stories, that's one of the things I want to look at, is I know he kind of follows the same structure in a lot of his stories of like the Fool being born, and he kind of stumbles into this social situation and then winds up helping somehow. I think a lot of it's based on the tarot and Kabbalah and Jodorowsky's studies in mysticism. So it's hard not to see that. I know that's heavy in the Incal, and it's hard not to see that same story pattern repeating here, where we start with like the fool being born, and then he goes out into the world and encounters different things. There's also a mention of the great king Yod. I know that the Yod is a Hebrew letter, Yod at least, Y-O-D-H, and that's kind of like the beginning of everything. God, like before it became self-conscious, I think is one of the ideas attached to that. So to have that as the king makes sense, and you get the sense also very early on that this story at its core is about the conflict between like nature and science overriding nature, and that those are at war with each other. So here you have the Roots breaking in to break the anomaly guy out, not the Roots, the band, that would be fun, to break him out of this big structure here. The birds here, which are shouting death to Megalex, obviously they're on the side of nature. They say they're preparing for the coming of Ain, A-I-N, the Earth Messiah, but that seems very Kabbalah to me too, because the tree of life would be called Ein Sof, E-I-N, I believe, E-Y-N, Ein Sof. So another thing that's like related to God as the like kind of pre-self-conscious God, the totality of existence God, and then the idea of a Messiah here. So it seems, yeah, like he's playing out this same structure. Then we meet like an empress-like character here. So early on in the journey, the fool would meet the empress, and she gives us a sense of like the society. These beasts lack any type of meta programming and aren't connected to the central computer, the great mega brain. They are powered by an ancient machine that bears the name instinct, which in our day and age is completely forbidden. So basically a completely technologically ruled society. Everyone's forced to be addicted to drugs. And yeah, everyone's just you can see in this big grid, there's just a grid that spans the whole planet, except for a forest here, and then like one area of like some toxic lakes that they haven't filled out yet. And the people in the forest are trying to regain the planet for everyone else. That's kind of the major plot thrust. It's interesting in this that Jodorowsky takes what would typically be a patriarchal society and turns it fairly matriarchal, in that it's run by a queen and a princess, but it still has a king at the center of it, but he's kind of a dead king. So you have a technological matriarchy that's very oppressive, with a dead king at the center of it. So I think that's some pretty powerful symbolism. And these people are benefiting, again, that they're at the top of the pyramid, and there's a big ceremony that revives their life for the next however many years. We go back and we see that the anomaly has been rescued by this woman, Adama. Shout out to Ballbishes. Tori's got a shaved head, and this look well, except for the gigantic boobs. Tori looking pretty hot like that. You look like that, baby. This is a good character. She's gonna see this while she's editing it. But Adama here with the gigantic fake looking boobs. Obviously, she's the first woman, Adam with an A at the end. Jodorowsky's not always the most subtle guy in the world, even though he has this amazing imagination. But now she's going to go introduce him to the rebels. Again, very much following the structure of the Incal, where you now go down into the underworld. You go under the earth. There's like these lakes here. It's kind of like the trash pile, and the lady that rides the rat, I believe she's also bald in the Incal. Maybe not. But yeah, you have the John DeFool character mounted on like a lizard, and then he goes to the underworld, and again it looks like it's got toxic lava and stuff. So very much seems in keeping thematically and, like I said, structurally. If you're talking about like a Jungian or Campbell type structure to a story, I think Jodorowsky's got one that he keeps coming back to. Some more Kabbalistic mentions in here. They're talking about going into the Thalmic level and sending Daleth brain waves to somebody. If I remember correct from all my Alan Moore-induced Kabbalah studies, the Daleth is like the missing one, the 11th missing one, the negative zone, so it's probably like sending dark energy would be my guess. One thing that consistently bugs me throughout this is these rectangular word balloons. That seems to be something that's more likely to happen in European art, and I just feel like they stand on the surface more somehow, and it feels like they're in the way of the art, whereas the rounded balloons for me feel a little bit more integrated, especially with such rendered soft art like this that feels a little sharp. And this page in particular, it really jumped out at me. This page also has some really interesting ideas here. If we read through this, they've got this mana, which it's like food stuff that can be turned into anything really, and they instead used it to turn it into the princess, the Princess Kavata, and then they're talking about like, oh, we're gonna eat her, and so it's this idea of cannibalizing, and then they go into this idea of like respecting the symbols too, you know, like this is she is a symbol and we have to respect her. So I want to read this stuff here. There she is, the bloodthirsty tyrant. I'll rip out your filthy heart. You've destroyed our families, poisoned the planet. You've given yourself 4,000 years to live, while the rest of us only live 40 years of this horrible existence. I'll eviscerate you. And this character says, your beauty is deceptive like a viper's. I've dreamt of bursting your eyes, tearing out your ears, and ripping out your tongue, and now I'm going to do it. And then this character here, this hunchback character who actually becomes the Messiah character, says, stop, I said, our enemy has royal blood. She isn't just some android. She has a right to preferential treatment, even if for the moment we only have a pale imitation of her. If we don't learn to respect the symbols, we'll never know how to respect what is real. I will take her apart myself in a private ritual. So he does go and take her apart and let her be consumed. And I think that's one of Jodorowsky's deep, like, mystical ideas, is that to overcome the enemy, you have to fully consume it. You really have to understand it from inside out on its side of things. You have to become it. And then you don't just topple old things. Like, we don't just throw away all of our old mythology because we've realized that they're not real. That's what he's saying. But you have to learn to respect the symbol. You have to respect the condensed, easy to share version of a thing before you're capable of analyzing it, before you can take it apart in a private ritual and know it for real. And I think that's a very powerful idea. I'll be thinking about the depths of that for a while. A couple moments in my edition, really on this page only, where some of the letters in the file got shifted. So that's probably the case in all of them. Just a weird corruption here where some of the word balloons don't line up. So you miss a couple letters, but you can still read it. And in this one, the anomaly now has been renamed Ram or Ram. I don't know. They have a little thing over the A, so I think it's Ram. And this character here, who's obviously one of the clones with the hunchback, now goes through this battle. They battle, the top 8 people battle, and whoever wins the battle is going to lead the 8 clans or something like that. And as he wins, he has this moment where, like, the light of heaven shines down upon him and his humpback bursts and the wings come out. And he's revealed as the Eker I. This is the Messiah that they've been waiting to help them win their battle over the Megalex. And you see Adama and Ram reunited here. So this fool was a seminal character in leading to the birth of the Messiah, even though he wasn't the Messiah himself. In the 3rd volume of Megalex, Fred Beltran changes his style, and they have a note about that in the first 2, he was really smitten with, like, pushing the boundaries of what could be done with the computer art. But by the time he got to the 3rd one, that technology wasn't so interesting to him anymore, and he wanted to go back to physical drawing with the digital coloring. And so you see in here that you have a bunch of art that's much more line-based, a lot more hatching and cross-hatching and texture on it. And honestly, personally, I like the look of this better. I remember when these were coming out and I was seeing them, I was totally blown away by the art that Fred Beltran was doing. But I feel like that's also something that appeals to a younger artist, is like this super shiny surface veneer, airbrushed everything. The older I get, the more I prefer seeing some hand in there. So I really enjoy looking at this where Fred Beltran's actually like doing some drawing based on the models that he's making or whatever. And then here you can see where they're like sacrificing the entire population who has just turned 40. They're blowing them all up. All that blood's going to flow and bathe the royals in the blood and keep them alive. And then at the same time, the mechanical wombs are going to spit out like enough replacement citizens, and then they're going to go deliver those to like babies, households all around. So it seems like every year one portion of the population is killed and is replenished in this society. And of course, with Jodorowsky, you got to have some disgusting sexuality in here. So the way they regenerate is all this blood flows into this bath, and then all of the wealthy people have a big orgy in the blood. Obviously, the rebels have snuck up through their blood transportation system and are attacking them. And really, the story resolves probably a little too quick. I get the feeling this was taking too long to come out, and Jodorowsky could tell that Fred Beltran wasn't really into it anymore or something, because the end wraps up pretty quick. But the ending of the story is that basically you have Zerain, who is the kind of messiah figure here with the wings, and Princess Kavata. They become like Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers from opposite sides of the battle. And really, they come to represent the merging of technology and nature. There are also some things that you see as the society itself gets invaded by these people who have been living in nature. You get this competent people who live out in the real world and have to deal with real world problems coming in, and very easily overcoming people who have been coddled and raised in a simulation. Basically, their entire world is artificial and simulated, to the extent that some of them are even like behind these AR goggles at all times. These two guys actually are just so high that they don't even know if they're being attacked or if it's just an overdose. So that idea of, competent people operating in the real world aren't going to have any problem when it comes to a physical confrontation versus a coddled person used to a simulated world. I like that idea. Jodorowsky always cracks me up with how he uses prefixes. It's always mega this, super that. And then here we have the most Jodorowsky thing, this animal that's just the supra mega. And they release this in the city and it wreaks havoc. And then they basically just squash it and use it for its blood to give the king Yod some more blood. But that's what this is here, is they drop an entire building on this guy and just squash him. So funny. I like this layout here, and this is a successful one where you get what I call the European Z, where you don't read like this, but you read in a path like that. And I think compositionally this one's really well done, especially with the horizon here kind of making like a sixth panel, and then this like pressing down really accentuates the path there. And then you can see all the blood here. And some more of Beltran's like hatching mixed with his really smooth coloring rendering, I think, is a nice look. Of course, in any story about nature versus technology, there's going to be a mother tree. I really like this idea. Me and Tori, I was talking to her about it last night. We both agree that we really hope Earth has a mother tree, like some really big old tree in the Amazon that through the network of roots and mycelium talks to all the other trees. So here's the mother tree in this story. You can see that balanced out here against, like, this is the the more natural thing, and this is like the phallic rocket taking off the destruction. A lot of exposition in this part, again, because I think Jodorowsky was trying to wrap the story up in this volume maybe a bit early, so that part gets a little bit heavy to me. But then when we get to the end here, things go real speedy, almost too speedy. They talk very much about the idea that we killed God and we are building a new one with the AI here. Like they're saying, it's my fault. I turned him into a vampire. And they killed you, silence-based female. Now that I have absorbed the spirit of this body, I am a royal bio machine. So now they're trying to figure out also like how to make a machine a bio machine. But this idea that I turned him into the vampire, like, yeah, I made him into these things with these technological progress that we made, I think is a potent statement that Jodorowsky is making in this section. And then as we barrel towards the end of this, things happen really quick. Like here, Kavata is coming to invade the forest, and it could be this huge, gigantic fight between the two of these forces. But really, you just have the Messiah comes out, and he offers her heart back. She's literally had her actual heart stolen. So some really heavy-handed symbolism there. But he gives her heart back. They fall in love. And you get another kind of repetition from the Incal, and a lot of Jodorowsky's other work is the sacred androgyne. In this, they call it the savior androgyne. So the full merging of Kadava and Zerain as the real I, Aker I. And this is the savior androgyne that's like a hermaphroditic, 100% male, 100% female kind of thing. That's the look for balance that Jodorowsky is always looking for. And in this one, it's very much a thing about, I'll show on the last page, it's nature and technology coming together. This is another example here of like, there's an entire invading force, all these people are dying, all these lizards are in, and these guys are so high that they're like, give me another dose, these hallucinations rock. Do you see what I'm seeing? A battle, man. That shit is the good stuff. So these guys are just so high and so checked out, they can't even realize when the world's falling down around them. I think that's where a lot of us, they're trying to push a lot of us. And some really interesting writing. We had long foreseen the birth of a neo-bioculture. Everything is happening as it should. Swallow your hatred and accomplish your duty. I have no hatred in my heart. I am not the one destroying you. History is. Megalex must disappear. Girigod must be reborn. So here's a couple of really interesting ideas. One is that this integration of technology and biology is, in Jodorowsky's mind, bound to happen. This is where all technological progress is headed and should take us, and that's where we all hope it heads, is a true integration of like a natural sustainable world with all the technological benefits and as little of the downsides as possible. And so they're telling her like, look, you may hate where we're at now, but don't go tearing it all down. Like, this was always the plan all along. This is an uncomfortable, necessary phase that we need to go to. And the rebel here, the sacred androgyne, is saying, like, this isn't out of hate. Like, we are just at that point. This is the necessary step where we have to take you apart because it's time for the neo-bioculture to happen. And so I think that's an idea that's really powerful, that a lot of revolution doesn't need to be driven by hateful emotions, that you can prove that the world is ready for the next step by showing the good stuff, which is pretty awesome. Wait, son, daughter, you are right to defend Girigod, but you are wrong to want to eliminate us. That is not your duty. Without an armed mega brain, no bioplanet would survive. So they're also saying, like, look, you can't just topple everything that came before. The society, the technology, all of that. You don't want to start from zero. You're building on top of this, and you're actually going to need these resources to make it work. You just have to hold these things accountable to do their actual service and get rid of anything that's not actual. So I think this is a very powerful page by Jodorowsky, where he's talking about how to have a revolution, really push the world into a new place, but to do it from a place of love rather than anger and rather than hate, and realizing that you're going to need a lot of what the society that you're trying to overthrow provided you. You wouldn't even be able to have the thoughts of how to make things better or how things are bad if you hadn't been given the intellectual tools of the society you're in. So I think this page is really, really powerful, and this is the kind of stuff from Jodorowsky that I love, and you wish someone would throw him money to make the movies he sees, because more people would see these stories then. The problem is he always also has like an orgy in a pool of blood, or, you know, rape everywhere, and that's a theme that I'll be looking at more with his work, I think. And then we get like a one page where all of these problems have been solved, and like now here we are, and society has changed, and within a few months you're starting to see already the integration of nature and science. You see Ram and Adama now are together, and they have a baby. So now you have a baby that's born of these clones, and that's going to be like this new life, I guess. There's some essays for context in here that I skimmed through. One of the things that really blew my mind and also made me very sad was that the Megalex story was originally supposed to be illustrated by Katsuhiro Otomo of Akira fame, and as amazing of a job as Beltran did, what a treat that would have been to have something between Jodorowsky and Otomo. Oh, like I almost wish I didn't know that almost happened. But the visions in my head, what it could have been, are pretty great. So really enjoyed Megalex a whole hell of a lot more than Annabelle 5, and this gives me hope that, you know, everything's not going to be the off-putting material that was in Annabelle 5, and I know that because, like I said, I've read a lot of this work prior. So very excited to keep going. Very excited to explore this story structure that Jodorowsky does over and over. I'm really excited to explore a bunch of them back to back and kind of see what his strategy with that is. So check in with me for further assessments of the rest of the stories in this volume and the others.